Have you come here to kill me? Graham didn't respond. He simply took in the sight before him. The musty air of the tomb filled his nostrils, drying out his breath, a slight wheeze rising from his lungs. The walls of the great chamber were high, stretching upwards towards the ceiling until they were swallowed up in a miasma of pitch blackness. The only light came from a fire pit in the center of the room, and behind that, bathed in the warm orange-red light of the flames, was the thing. Graham suppressed a shudder. He had volunteered for the task, agreed to hunt the thing down. He was the only one who could do it. He was the only one who had taken a life before. They didn't care how long ago that had been, or that he was just a blacksmith now. Whatever it was had already slaughtered the livestock and withered the crops. The town was on the brink of starvation, but none dared track it down. Better to barely scrape by than to be slain. But then, it began to take the children. First, Talon, the baker's son. Then, Gwyneth, the stable-keeper's daughter. Then 2 more. Then 5. And soon, a dozen total. All stolen away in the night. Not a scream or a shout to be heard. So, Graham resolved to take up the sword once more, to rid the town of this blight, and God's permit, bring the children back home. He departed from town, a sword strapped to his back and the heavy burden of his beloved town on his shoulders. He would not return until the thing was dead. And he had found it. He tracked it to the tombs at the base of the northern mountains, on the opposite end of the valley, and now he stood in the great chamber of the decaying tombs, the beast finally in front of him. All the resolve Graham had felt began to falter as he laid eyes upon the creature in front of him. It was a girl, a human girl. She was tiny and waif-like. Blonde curls poured down over her shoulders, gleaming like gold in the light of the fire. She wore a simple white dress.
Sir, are you here to kill me?
Yes, Graham answered coldly.
You would kill a child?
The hair on Graham's neck stood up. Her voice was high and musical, no older than 6 or 7 years old, but when she spoke, it sounded wrong. The voice was young, but behind the flute-like melody dwelled something ancient. She didn't speak like a child. Her words felt measured, calculated. She held herself in a way which betrayed a cunning intelligence, and it terrified him. I see no children here, he rasped. She giggled happily, dulcet tones filling the hall, carried by a current of ice. Graham shivered. The little girl stepped closer to the bonfire, illuminating her face more clearly. He caught his breath. Her eyes were milky white, covered in a thick film that glowed in the firelight. She fixed him with a stare, her eyes seeing almost to his soul. She smiled, revealing needle-like teeth, an ancient malice painting itself over the face of a child.
Then what am I that you seek to destroy me?
Vampire. Graham spit the word from his mouth as if it was poisoned.
I cannot help for what I am. For this, I should be put to death.
Graham's heartbeat began to quicken, a fire building in his core. You took our children! Graham's voice cracked as he said it, fury mingling together with sorrow. The corner of the vampire's lips curved up just slightly.
Yes,
she said. The rage began to climb its way up Graham's chest, and into his throat.
Our cattle were not enough to satisfy you?
His voice filled the great chamber like peals of thunder. The tiny vampire arched an eyebrow.
Oh, you sweet child.
She littered as she began to move around the fire. Graham's hand rose to grip the hilt of a sword. She came to a stop just meters away from him.
The cattle are for food. The children, however...
Her voice trailed off, and her eyes swerved to the ceiling.
You live in a cruel world, she said. You toil and slave. You grow old. You become brittle and weak. And then you die and become food for the worms.
Graham eyed the vampire wearily, but she paid him no heed. Her eyes locked on the ceiling. After a few moments, he dared to take his eyes from her and follow her gaze.
Why would you ever want that for your children? To slave their lives away, only to grow old and sick and crawl their way to their graves?
Graham strained his eyes, trying to see what it is she was seeing. Somewhere in the darkness, something stirred.
If you could take that fate from them, would you not?
More movement.
Why would you let them toil away in insignificance?
Her voice rang in his ears, silky and dreamlike.
When you can save them from it all.
Joy crept into her voice.
When you can make them better.
High above, two large white dots pierced through the darkness. Graham's blood turned to ice. Eyes. Another pair opened up. Then another, until a dozen pairs of milky white orbs peered down at him from the darkness. Graham stumbled backwards, nearly losing his balance. His jaw hung open in horror. No. No. Please, no.
My darlings,
the vampire called out lovingly. Then the eyes moved out from the darkness and into the glow of the fire. They came down the walls and the pillars of the great chamber, crawling like spiders, their pale fingers digging into the cold stone, finding purchase. They stopped about halfway down, and every single one swiveled their heads to face him. Graham took several steps back, his mouth working up and down, trying to find words that weren't there. The children, all of them. He spied Talon clinging to a pillar. Gwyneth hung by one hand from a sconce, and then Graham spied a tiny girl in an alcove in the wall, her arms curled around her knees, her head balanced on top. She watched him through cloudy eyes. He froze. Bronwyn. Bronwyn was the cobbler's daughter. From the first day Graham had come into town, she had been taken to him. When she became too much to handle, which was often, her parents would send her to his shop, and she would spend her time spinning silly stories and teaching him all about the bugs she had collected in the forest. She had always greeted him with a joyful laugh, and would practically throw herself into his arms so he could lift her up, giggling up above his head, pure happiness in her eyes. And now those same eyes peered down at him, cold and dead and hungry. Her lips parted, revealing a mouth filled with ivory daggers. A forked tongue slid through, gliding across her fangs and licking her lips before snaking back in. Graham's heart fractured. Tears welled in his eyes. No. Gods, no. The ice-cold lump of grief in Graham's throat roared to life, spreading through his bulky frame, the sorrow swelling into white-hot rage. He tore his eyes away from the thing that used to be Bronwyn, and fixed his sights on the demon in the white dress, standing before the blazing fire. His sword was in hand before he even realized it. "What have you done?" he roared.
"I saved them,"
the vampire replied, her voice calm and level.
"You've damned their souls!"
"What need is there for a soul
when I have given them eternity.
And then wrath claimed Graham. The vampire had barely finished speaking before the blacksmith launched himself at her, clearing the distance in a blink of an eye. She didn't move. She didn't have to. From his left, a pale white blur sprang from the shadows, claws and teeth bared. Graham didn't miss a beat. He pivoted, bringing his sword down in an arc, feeling the blade tear through flesh, sinew, and bone. A resounding shriek pierced his eardrums as the pale mass soared past him and hit the ground, tumbling into two separate directions. Graham's eyes followed the two heaps as they rolled to a halt. His fractured heart shattered as he gazed upon the lily-white visage of Bronwyn, her jaw slack, her eyes open in shock, seeing nothing. There was a churning in his stomach, and then the keen wail of a broken heart escaped his lips. His wails were joined by an inglorious shriek of mournful wrath.
"My child!"
the vampire screamed, and the others descended on him, screeching in hunger as they launched themselves from the walls. Graham's entire demeanor shifted. His mind retreated as his body took over, his muscles remembering 1,000 battles waged decades before. Danced through the air, cutting through flesh, slicing limbs, parting heads from their accursed bodies. And with every slash of his blade, Graham felt as if he was gutting himself. With each vampiric child put to rest, his heart broke anew, and the pained cries of the vampire mingled with his own. They fell one by one in quick succession, and scarcely a minute had passed before Graham stood amongst a pile of tiny corpses, his chest heaving, his sword dripping with innocent blood.
"What have you made me do?"
Graham whimpered, his face screwing up into a rictus of pain. The vampire paid him no heed. Her own grief filled the great chamber, her mournful cries rising up for her fallen children. "What have you made me do?" Graham yelled. He stared at the blood on his hands, the blood of Talon, of Gwyneth, of Bronwyn, and then he looked to the beast in front of him. He no longer saw a little girl. He could only see disease, famine, anguish, a parasite who fed on joy and love until nothing was left but desolation. And then the tears stopped, and his jaw clenched. His sword clattered to the ground, and his bloody hands closed into fist, his knuckles cracking sharply, his eyes set with a stony determination. He saw his fate, he understood it, and he came to peace with it. The vampire had lost herself to a fit of rage and grief, and didn't notice as the massive blacksmith charged her, eyes wild, mouth open wide in a howl of rage. He closed the distance in an instant, scooping up the tiny demon into his arms, and then hugging tightly to the screaming vampire. Graham hurled them both into the fire pit behind them. Embers exploded into the darkness as they hit the burning coals, kicking up a constellation of red-hot stars. The vampire writhed underneath his mountainous frame, but Graham kept her pinned. She screamed and thrashed and scratched, her claws ripping into Graham's flesh in a futile attempt to escape. The flames crept over them both, scorching their flesh, sending the macabre stench of charred meat into the air. The blacksmith held firm, gritting his teeth against the pain, holding the monster to the coals, purifying the tomb of its unholy presence. And when both of their skin began to turn to ash, Graham finally gave in to the torment, threw back his head, and through ruined vocal cords, let loose a cry of agony, and of grief, and of victory. The vampire underneath him screamed out in a blood-curdling ululation of pure torture, and then her struggles weakened and waned, until the life drained from her necrotic eyes, the abomination finally slain. Graham's grip on the creature relented and he fell atop her, the flames crawling across their cracked and blackened bodies. And then Graham the blacksmith commended his spirits to the gods. He breathed his last breath and let the flames carry him away, so whatever destiny lay just beyond death's impenetrable veil.